Hello and welcome to this episode of Addicted to Business. Today we are joined by Charlotte, the HR master, I'm led to believe. Charlotte is from Mad HR. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. And to my left, I'd like to introduce Nathan Lomax of Quickfire Digital. How are you, Nathan?
Hello, how are you?
Great stuff.
I don't think anyone's going to respond to that. Yeah, I'm all right, mate. Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
Glad you're watching.
It's live. Sorry, we started off rather silly. I to apologise. It's a terrible sense of humour.
I was going to say, this is all your fault. We've had a great laugh in the green room, which as we go into Series 2, we're really moving up the ranks. So we've got our own green room and a dressing room and everything. It's amazing. Fine. So today, I really want to talk to the people listening and watching around the importance of people. So people can be your most important asset, right the way through to the other end of the scale, your biggest headache. And so what I want to talk to, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, is all around people, around getting the best out of people, when people perhaps aren't performing as they could, the steps you should go through, because hopefully some people going through that situation, they're listening, will just reach out and contact you and we'll make sure you're tagged in. That'd be great. Some people, of course, won't be in a position to do that financially or whatever. So what practical insight can they take to make sure that they don't get tripped up and find themselves in court and all those good things? All sound okay?
Wonderful.
A lot of questions there.
A lot of questions. I'm recognising we've only got about 45 minutes.
So we're gonna whiz through, right?
I will try and be brief.
So we'll jump straight in. So like I say, people, most important asset. We're very fortunate here. We have a wonderful team, and I'm sure you work with many different businesses with many very talented people. Let's start with the positives. How do you recognise and reward great work? Because sometimes it isn't just cash. And for some of the people listening, they're like, oh, we've actually got this really good employee. They're doing really well. They're excelling in their field. We want to keep them, but maybe they can't afford to just chuck another 10 grand a year on their pay. So what can people do without treading into sticky water of, oh, actually, you've done it for that person, you've got to now do it for the whole team?
I think it's a really interesting point, and thank you for bringing it up, because I think this is an area which is so important. It can have a huge amount of impact, but it's different for different people, and that's really the message that I would want to get across, because, you know, different people will value different types of reward and recognition. Yeah. You're right. For some people, the reality is that it is about the financials. But also, you know, when you're saying thank you to somebody, do they want it in a big public forum in front of everybody? Do they want that real public recognition, or is it more that they want to be recognised on a one-to-one basis? There's lots of different activities that you can do. Lots of, businesses, they put a lot of effort into their reward and recognition programs, their benefits programs. I've actually just started working with a client, and they've got a phenomenal benefits package.
Really?
But nobody knows about it. So the reality is that they've got all of these wonderful offers, but it was, you know, when it was communicated as this is a great reward for all of you guys and you can get discounts from here, there and everywhere. Yeah. There was a great big launch. Then people kind of got on with their day jobs, forgot about it. And over a period of time, no one is accessing the benefits to which they're entitled. Sure. So I think, you know, for me and for organisations, there's lots that you can do, but your starting point is really to talk to people and find out what is it that they value? How do they want to be recognised? Because there's lots that you can do that don't cost anything.
So individual motivators is really important, and one of our guests coming up is Cassandra Andrews, who does a lot around motivational mapping and stuff, which will be really interesting. One challenge I've got, and actually as a business owner ourselves, like we can talk about, is how you keep it fair. Because it's all well and good, okay, one person over here in this seat's motivated by money, someone over here is motivated by a lovely post on LinkedIn. Great. We give them £1,000, we give them a thank you. Like, it may motivate them, but at the same time, it's not equal.
In that instance, absolutely, it wouldn't be equal. So I think it's about looking at, as an organisation, what is it that we value? What can we afford, and how can we make sure that everybody has access? to those reward strategies that we're trying to put in place. I think that, obviously there is a financial element which needs to be looked at, but that's going to be very much depend on the company, its budget, and what it can afford. But it's not, so that makes up one element of it, and we need to be fair and consistent across the board. But there are other elements. So, are we, for example, wanting to reward people with incentives such as vouchers? Are we wanting to run incentives such as, you've been working really hard, really appreciate all of your effort, here's a voucher to go out with you and your loved one or chosen person to recognise that we've taken you out of, your personal life for a period of time, have this time back.
And can that be given, for example, here's some vouchers, go and have dinner tonight, or do you have to physically give back the time? So here's some vouchers, go for lunch, which is in essence my working time, and do it that way. What's the best way to do it?
Again, I think it's about looking at what you're wanting to do, because if you're going to really want to reward people, you need to be fair. And so if you're saying, well, you can do this and here's a voucher, you can have it in your lunch break, but you're only allowed that hour's lunch.
It's kind of slightly patronising, isn't it?
Absolutely, that's kind of giving a bit of a conflicting message.
Sure.
So, if people are genuinely working really hard and they're putting in all of those hours, then recognising that and being fair and giving them some time back for that, it works both ways.
They deserve an actual reward.
Absolutely.
Nothing less sort of this. You don't have to give it back to me. This is for you. This is your time.
Yeah, it's driving the right behaviours, and I think it's working in the values of your organisation and treating people with dignity, respect, and really, rewarding people and not kind of giving with one hand but then taking it away with the other. That's just mixed messages, so and people will see through it.
The time one is a really interesting one, because one thing that seems to be a real buzz at the moment is around flexi working and the 4-day work week and all that good stuff. And I'm a massive advocate of it. Admittedly, I haven't even tried it, so I'm an advocate, because I think that while as a director you'd still have to work 5 days, it gives you a point of difference, right? The digital transformation, or certainly when we're just doing web, is very commoditized. Everyone seems to be doing it. So why come and work for Quickfire and not someone else? And I can spill all the kind of benefits and all that good stuff. But actually, what is it that we give our people? And actually saying, oh, you know what, you only work 4 days a week and it's a rota system. So every couple of weeks you get a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday or whatever, I think would be really powerful. But why has it suddenly become so important? It seems like there's been a massive shift and everyone's like, whoa, we've all got to do flexi working.
I think that, it's something which we're a massive advocate for at MAD, and, we do operate flexible working. We have full-time consultants, we have part-time consultants. But even with our full-time consultants, one of our team the other day, she needed to spend some time with her family, and it's like, absolutely. You've done your hours,
it's
you go and do that.
And,
it's just go and you manage your diary, and I'm having to kind of push them because they're such an amazing team and they want to absolutely deliver for our clients. It's like, we actively encourage our team to make sure that there is that balance between work and personal life, because we know the benefits. I'm a working mum too.
Sure.
So, why is there a big push for flexible working? Well, the law has had something to do with that in terms of the entitlements for those family-friendly policies. So, it is a legal entitlement, but actually it's about the recruitment market, trying to attract key talent. The reality is that the market is a candidate's market. So people with, those skills and experience that you want, as you've just said, what's going to make them come to your organisation over someone else? So that's about, the environment that you're creating, the culture that you're creating, the benefits, the intangible benefits. Flexible working
makes you
is
attractive
a massive one.
to talent, doesn't it?
Do you work on a set of core hours and then flexible either side? So, for example, in between 10 till 3, but the rest is absolutely up to you? Or how does your flexi working work at MAD?
With our flexible working, the first port and call is that our clients need to be, we need to be able to deliver the quality service to our clients. As long as they're happy and the work is delivered to them, then, we can work the hours around that. So some of our consultants start early in the morning because they're morning birds. Others, there are times when we have to be on site with a client because the situation determines that we need to do that.
Yeah.
We're there until 7:00 at night.
Right.
So, we manage our time. We're all grown-ups at the end of the day.
Yeah.
We're all really wedded to what we're about, and what we're about is delivering a great service to our clients. So as long as they're happy, we're happy.
I think that makes your staff more dedicated as well. They want to do, they realise that they in effect, it's like when you turn 18 as a child, you're given this responsibility all of a sudden, and you've got that responsibility. You have to match that responsibility, and that's what.
Yeah, I think so. I think because. I think we've got to work in the realms of reality, because there's a lot of hype in the media about 4-day working weeks and unlimited annual leave, and things
great.
like that. And there's lots of organisations that have that, and it works for them. But then you might get, for example, a smaller business that literally hasn't got the capacity to run a flexible working offering, or you might have a manufacturing business where you are literally running 24/7
around the world.
Absolutely. And I was talking to someone the other day, and they were saying, this unlimited holiday, whilst it seems great as a concept, if we offered that to our team, we'd never see anyone.
And you'd never make any money either.
Absolutely. So,
always helps.
Yeah, I think, we have to deal with the reality, and every business is different. Every industry is different.
It's very situational, isn't it? I think.
Yeah. And so I think it's really important that when you're looking into these initiatives, you're really thinking about what is it that we're wanting to achieve here. Let's not just do it because it's topical or fashionable at the time, or because everybody else is doing it. Let's look at what the commercial benefits are. And as far as I'm concerned, if it's right for the business, if it's right for the team, and if it's right for the client, then absolutely happy days, happy to look at that as a proposal. If it just works for the benefit of the business, but the reality is that it's going to, impact the client or
Absolutely.
our team, then that's not going to happen. That's not going to fly. We need to go back to the table. Equally, you can't just do things to keep the team happy, because the business has got to fund it. And if it impacts the end user, your customer or client, then again, it's nonsensical. So for me, those are kind of the 3 areas really, which I think need to be considered, and look at it from all of those perspectives.
In terms of 2 topics that are really hot at the moment, one is core values and one is culture. So I think off the top of my head, a couple of businesses that do it well in Norwich, Indigo Swan and my friend James Groves, and they seem to be doing phenomenally well with the culture. And the other is Fountain and Rebecca and her team there. So the biggest challenge I have is the word culture is just banded around, right? Oh, we've got great culture. What makes good culture? Because actually what makes good culture for them over there may not be the same over there. So, are there any fundamentals that make a good culture?
It's an interesting one. I think it's, what's the definition of culture? And it's the same as, the 2 big things at the moment, culture and values. What are our values? And I've seen various definitions of both. I think when we're looking culturally at an organisation, it's how we do things around here. You can walk into an environment and it's how you feel, what you can see.
As a client or as a team member?
Hear,
or
both.
Yeah.
Both.
It's the happiness of the people, ultimately.
It really is. It's, it's about how engaged are people. What's the ethics like of a business? And we put a lot of onus, obviously, on how we promote ourselves as a brand externally. We use great marketing agencies, and we, put a lot of emphasis on how we appear externally to people. What I recognise with businesses is that there isn't so much necessarily attention focused on how we are internally. So this is about the employer brand, for example. So, when we're looking at the whole recruitment and retention strategy, when I look at people's websites, the first thing that I'll do from a HR perspective is go to their careers page. And then it's like, oh, I've got this amazing website and I can see exactly what you do and who your customers are and what it is that you offer. But in terms of an employer, I'm not sure. I'm not sure why I would choose to come and kind of apply for a vacancy. Or we might have some, details about the role, but what is it like to work here? What is the culture of this business? Let's look at our employer brand from the team's perspective.
I mean, that's a lovely takeaway, right, for anyone watching and listening, is it's not just about the outward-facing brand for your clients, but also for your people. And I've had many people say they've used Instagram for us in terms of finding out what it's like to work here and be part of it, and the website and other socials maybe are more for clients. Okay, so we've talked about the culture and maybe what makes a good culture. I mean, we could have a whole podcast on culture alone, right? And
we could have
you
a
look
whole
at
podcast
Rebecca
about all of it,
and Emily's Culture Awesome podcast, and if anyone's really watching, go and have a look at that. It's absolutely phenomenal and some great insight there. But I think the other one I want to talk about is values, because, again, massive buzzword. Everyone's talking about values, but so many brands don't live and die by the values, right? They've just got values that go on the wall in big, bold writing, and it just is a thing to do, but they mean nothing.
Yeah, you're absolutely
They're
right.
said but not done.
Yeah, and your values drive the culture of the business.
Yeah.
So within Mad HR, our values are really simple. They're the Paris values. So that stands for passion, accountability, results, integrity, and simplicity. If you asked any member of our team what our values were, they would be able to tell you. Not only would they be able to tell you, they'd be able to demonstrate it. And I can say that with 100% confidence.
I'm going to call someone.
Do.
We should call them live on air and be like,
yeah, do
what a Paris was.
Phone a friend.
Yeah.
But I'm really, really confident that they would be able to do that. And the reason is because we live and breathe them. We recruit against our values. So the people that we've got, they are so passionate about what they do. They're passionate about HR. They're passionate about business. They're really lovely people. And, we are absolutely accountable for what we do. We also make our clients accountable as well, because HR is one of those kind of wonderful things that is normally added on to people's day jobs.
Yep.
But it's way down the list of priorities.
Yeah.
So
and you normally don't know you need it until it's kind of too late, right?
Absolutely. And so we recognise that, but we also recognise that we need to get stuff done. Yeah. So that accountability is so important. And in terms of the results focus, make a difference HR, that's what we're about. And I think that HR has such a fundamental part to play in the success of a business, because as you started off by saying, your people are your greatest asset. Again, I hear that bandied about all the time. They have the potential to absolutely be a great asset for you, but you're right, they also have the potential
to be a
little bit of a nightmare.
Going to the complete opposite side of the spectrum, and I'm sure you have to deal with the culture and the values of businesses. How do you then deal with the opposite end? So how do you deal with, what am I trying to say?
Hold that thought, because I've got one more thing, is around championing in the business. And then we'll go to the nasty side of HR. Because actually,
there's a dark side.
It's really nice talking about the flowery side, and that's wonderful, and I much prefer talking about this side. But actually, the people championing is one that I'm particularly interested in. I'm sure people listening and watching will be as well, in terms of HR seems to always have to come from the top. And so it's like, yes, I get you have to lead by example. I'm absolutely all for that. But like little things, like we introduced a team lunch. We said, okay, on Mondays, 12 till 12:30, we all have team lunch. Every week for 5 weeks, we did it religiously. And at 12 o'clock on the dot, I would stand up and be like, right, team lunch, stop what you're doing. The second my meeting overran till 12:04, I'll go out my meeting, nobody's on team lunch. And I'm like, why is no one doing team? Oh, because no one had told us. Are you kidding me? Do I need to stop and tell you that you're allowed to eat? It's bizarre. But there's loads and loads. I mean, that's a tiny crass example, but there's loads of examples where unless people actually buy into it, and unless you have someone not just at senior leadership, but within the organisation championing it and almost pushing it forwards, then sometimes it's not stuck to, right? Because you're not always there in the business.
It's about responsibility at the end of the day, and I think that's a really good point, in that HR is it's basically the human resources of an organisation, And so anybody with people management responsibility, they are a HR practitioner. They have to be, because they're responsible for getting the very best out of their team, not just delivering a result in isolation. The example that you've just used there, that's really about the responsibility, and it's responsibility that's imposed. So I am telling you that you need to do this, but actually if the individual doesn't buy into it, if they don't feel that they've got a choice, they might not necessarily understand what it is that they're supposed to do, the reasons for it, the importance of it. What happens is that they will follow instruction and do it when you tell them that they need to do it. But when you're not there, it won't happen. So you haven't really affected the culture. You really haven't driven performance. You're not creating these thinking beings. You've just told them to do something, and then they've gone and implemented it.
Yeah, and the same with this green room, when it's not the podcasting studio, is meant to be a culture room. And it's like, okay, I thought that everyone, when we did a bit of a survey and everyone wanted an area to break out and go and play PlayStation and get away from their, one screen to another screen, but essentially get away from the desk. And sure enough, it's never used, right? Because it's like, actually, it's, I don't know, not practical. I mean, one person said it's too far to walk. It's about 11 steps. Short of putting a PlayStation
Was that
on...
you that said that, Nathan?
Short of putting a PlayStation on your desk, what else can I do? But this is the thing, and I think a lot of businesses will be able to relate here, is that actually, while we all try and do what we think is best for the culture, actually sometimes it's important to try something, and if it doesn't work, try something else, right? I can't insist on team lunch. If they don't want to do team lunch, that's absolutely down to them. I'm not responsible for making sure I'm here at 12 o'clock every week to tell people to sit down and eat lunch. That can't happen. So if they don't want to follow, that's absolutely fine. We'll find something else. But I think it's really important to recognize that and understand that, even although we think we're really proud of our culture and building something, we're still learning so much.
I think it's about keeping it fresh and really involving the team. And involving them in the solutions and also in the decision makings, and then allowing them to drive it, because you're right, if it's all being driven from the top, what happens when you're not there to drive it? And we often see this, and especially in those smaller businesses where that are owner managed. And suddenly, there's only 7 days a week, 24 hours in every day. Not only are you trying to run the business, build the pipeline for future business and everything else that comes in, you're doing your day job as well, and then you're having to motivate the rest of the team. Again, HR is one of those elements that kind of gets pushed to the back. And I think that we often try things. So it goes back to what I was saying earlier, in terms of the initiatives that we try them, they fail. So we forget about them and we move on. What we don't necessarily do is go back and look into the reasons of some...
the post-mortem and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. What could we have done differently to make this even more effective?
It's consistent learning, isn't it, effectively?
Absolutely. And consistency is key, because, it's a bit like the dreaded appraisals, that happen.
We're going to come to those, don't worry.
The dark side is coming.
Absolutely. It happens once a year and everyone kind of goes... It's appraisal time, so we've all got to take time out of our day. You go into it with that attitude, everyone else goes into it with that attitude, and then what happens at the end of it? Well, you've completed the paperwork and then it goes in the drawer.
Never to be seen again.
In 12 months' time.
Let's let the dust gather. Okay, so I'm really glad actually that this podcast hasn't all been around the potential. No, it's not the dark side really, but of course there's another side to HR, and actually it's important for everyone to realise and understand that there is a great side to HR around people empowerment and all that good stuff. But I think a lot of people listening and watching may also be interested to hear about the other side to HR. So I guess we start with performance. And so we're all, I'm sure, very fortunate, have wonderful teams. But on occasion, you may get I will politely coin it as a rotten apple. Okay, so potentially an apple that isn't quite the fit that you had hoped. And they will sit in your organisation. And as we know with rotten apples in a cart, if they have too long in the cart, they can rot other apples. How do you go about removing said rotten apple? That was the most politically correct thing I've ever said.
I'm very
amazing.
What a metaphor.
Yes, so how do we dispose of rotten apples?
Yeah, with a good composter. So effectively, you know, this is the sort of call that we get a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And usually, you know, it's so just help us understand exactly what the challenges are. So is it related to performance? Is it related to attitude? What is it? Because being really clear and specific on what the challenge is will really help us to speak to the individual and deal with it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what usually comes back is a whole host of situations and where they haven't been performing. And then the next question is, so, you know, what action have you taken? What have you said to them? Nothing. How long has it been going on for? Months and months.
Yeah,
in
years.
some cases.
Boiling up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you know, it is a challenge, but it's absolutely not insurmountable. And you're absolutely right. It needs to be dealt with and dealt with quickly and swiftly because it does have a knock-on effect to everybody else within the organisation.
Well, this is it, right? It can bring the others down with them.
Well, it can. And also, you know, looking at the commercial reality of it, that if you let something fester and then it escalates and builds, it actually takes longer to deal with it.
And it's harder.
It's harder. It's much more costly. It starts to get, you know, people start to get emotionally charged with it as well.
Well, this is the perfect thing is how do you remove emotion? Because actually leading a business, like the conversation around performance is never a nice one, right? No one enjoys saying, actually, you're not performing as we'd hoped. But actually, a lot of it is around emotion as well, because you may like that team member, whether it be a him or a her. Like, you may have a friendship with them. And it's so hard to, certainly as a leader of business, to step away and kind of not have that emotional connection because they all become friends and you want to help them progress in their journey. So how do you then almost wear a different hat to say, look, friendship parked here, this is performance related, you are not pulling your weight, what's going to happen?
Okay, so what we're talking there is we're talking about those difficult conversations to have, really. And I think, you know, takeaways are just be direct. So if you have to be really mindful about the rules of engagement. So, you know, it's great that you have great relationships with the team, that you might be able to go out and engage on a friendly basis. But actually, this is a professional working environment. So this goes down to, well, what are the standards and expectations here? When you said, you know, in terms of performance, it's a difficult conversation. It doesn't really need to be. Yeah. I think
it's very black and white, right? You're either performing or you're not performing.
Well, it is. But I think, you know, firstly, we need to start off with, well, what does good look like? Yeah. Because that's often where you get the challenge.
Set the benchmark.
Absolutely.
And does that need to be shown to the individual? I mean, for people watching and listening, like if they have a challenge within their organisation around somebody that's perhaps not performing as they had hoped, is it their responsibility to sit down with that person and say, this is what good looks like? Or should the employee take responsibility to say, actually, I'm not stupid. I know what good looks like. I know that being able to put this shelf together or whatever is an absolute fundamental of my role.
I think it's a mixture of both, but unless you've got clarity to make sure that what the individual's version of what good looks like meets the manager's version of what good looks like, that's where you get the challenge.
Sure.
Because, you know, let's just take something as really basic as cleanliness, for example. Yeah. You know, you might think that, you know, having a workstation that is completely clear at the end of every night with all of your paperwork locked away, complete clear desk policy, that is what good looks like. Whereas the individual
Don't
might...
look at my desk.
Okay. I did notice it when I came in.
Good thing we don't have that policy.
But, you know, another version of another person may think that, well, to be honest, I know my desk looks messy to everybody else, but I know where everything is. It's organised. So my version of good is different to your version of good. Whose version?
Very subjective, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So starting out and being really, really clear and making sure that both parties have the same version of what good looks like is really important. And I think that we often assume a lot. Yep. Well, of course they know what they're doing. And the reality is that most people will be acting with the best of intentions, but they may not have all of the information.
This is the thing, right? No one comes in wanting to do a bad job. No, you just wouldn't. Yeah, that's just... I like to think I have enough faith in humanity to think that nobody comes in purposely to do a bad job. So therefore, if they are, like you say, it's a frank conversation, but at the same time, I always say seek to understand before being understood.
Yeah,
you have to see from their side and understand, actually, there is no clarity around what good looks like, or there are mitigating circumstances which you're not aware of. And that, I guess, segues us into our next topic, which is you've gone through the performance review. You've said, okay, this is what good looks like. You've given them a sensible period of time to show you that their performance improves. I mean, I'm saying this as if I know what I'm talking about here. But
I'm very impressed.
Yeah, there we go.
Continue. We're actually looking for another HR consultant, so there you go.
Bag yourself a job.
You then decide, right, it's time for second meeting, and we need to discuss, okay, has it been met? I guess measure what's been done. Look at me go. And then discuss, okay, what's the next steps if things don't happen? And that's where I guess... I'm sure a lot of people watching and listening could have probably told us that first bit. But this is, I think, where it gets grey. It certainly does for me.
So in terms of the process, you're absolutely right. It's about having that first meeting and highlighting, what are the concerns, giving specific examples so that the individual knows exactly, what needs to happen. Spend a lot of time around focusing on what good looks like, what the expectations are, and find out if they've got everything that they need in order to deliver the result that you're after. Is it because they haven't got the resource? Is it because they haven't got the training? Is it because they haven't got the equipment? Is it because there's something going on at home, which means that, they might need to take a little bit of time out, a couple of days holiday, to go and get their house in order so that then they can come back and have their heads in the game.
They're stressing about work when they're stressing about their personal
business
life.
Wants to remove a member of staff, right? Because essentially it's an expensive process to recruit. So actually, ideally, you would just have the team member that you've got, and you buy into them, and you want them to succeed. And so it's not something anyone wants to do, but sometimes I guess it is necessary because they are holding the business back. And
businesses move on. It's the infinite game, and what happened and what was acceptable, 10 years ago might not be acceptable now. We know that the economy is different. More people are entering into the marketplace. Technology is moving on. Our clients want more for less, and so that performance and that standard of what was acceptable a few years ago, actually that has moved forward. So we need everybody to be looking at performance as this continual process, that we're not just picking up on those people that are underperforming, we're also picking up on those people that are performing and doing stuff that's good now, but how can they continually improve moving forward? Because the business is going to have to continually improve.
Always.
So your people need to be doing that as well. But in answer to your question, just to go back, because I know that this will be something which, many employers will be needing to deal with. So highlight what good looks like. And the important thing is what is the next step? What is the consequence? If we don't get this desired behaviour, then what will happen?
Laid out in the first meeting?
Absolutely.
And how long are you giving people to improve generally? Is it
so
1 foot?
You need to have a reasonable amount of time to improve. And this whole word reasonable, there is no...
subjective in itself, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So the objectives... the objectives that you're setting for individual, it needs to be realistic that, they have an opportunity to improve. Because let's not forget, the whole purpose behind this performance improvement process is to get an improvement in the performance. It's not to deliver sanctions to individual and penalties.
Exactly right.
It's to punish. It's actually to get the desired behaviour.
Yeah.
So, being really clear about what the level of expectation is and when you're going to go back and review it. So it might be that you've set a number of objectives. You're going to go back and review it after a month's time. But then if they haven't met those objectives and reached that desired standard, or it might be that they have done but just not enough, what's going to happen next? that's the bit that normally doesn't get followed up on because the day-to-day gets,
in the way, right?
Absolutely. So the meeting gets pushed back or doesn't happen, or, everything's absolutely fine. You're now doing what I need you to do. So, we'll say no more about it.
Sure.
But the reality is that you need to close that loop, and there needs to be a consequence, because what happens if that behaviour then dips back into how it was before?
Yeah.
What you need to be doing is following your process and procedure, and going on through the various stages of that. So, is the next warning a formal warning? So if they're not meeting those expectations, then you are going to have to do what your policy says and issue that first written warning.
Yeah.
And, again, set those metrics in place. But this is about being supportive of the individual, making sure that they actually understand where the areas of concern are and what they can do, and coming up with solutions with them to actually get that desired improvement.
Sure. So they've gone through the series of warning. Let's play. I'm conscious of time, and I want to give the guys and girls watching and listening as much value as possible. So let's do a little bit of role play.
Okay. Here we go.
Right. So your employer.
Yes.
I'm team member. We're in for performance review number 1. So we're going to go through 4 stages, okay? The first is it's my first time. So it's not first warning, second warning, third warning out the door. It's, the first time. So talk to me.
Okay. So
obviously summarising, we don't need the whole meeting.
Absolutely. Yeah, because we haven't got a huge amount of time. Yeah. So effectively, in that first meeting, what I would be saying is that I've got a number of concerns about your performance, and I wanted to talk to you about it. So then we would go through the reasons, what my observations are, and these are my own observations as your manager, rather than, well, I've been told this, that and the other, because that's what makes it personal.
So, sorry to jump in, but important for everyone to understand that person conducting that first initial kickoff of the review, I guess, is a line manager or something like that, not necessarily an external party that doesn't have the kind of day-to-day relationship with that person. Is that right?
I think what's important, when we work with our clients, is that we sit shoulder to shoulder, because it's not for HR as a support to the business. It's not there to do the job of the manager, because, it's the manager's responsibility to get the best out of their team. So, we're all about building capability, not creating a dependence. So as we're going through this, we can sit shoulder to shoulder, and sometimes we do have to lead on the conversation, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
But actually what we're wanting from that situation is for it to be resolved and move forward and be able to progress.
Yeah.
But also that the manager that we're working with actually is able to learn from that experience so that they can grow in their own development as well.
Sure. So, okay, I've taken first, I'm just conscious of time, I've taken first meeting. It's like, so
at the first meeting, it's not a disaster. It's that this is where we're operating right now, and this is where you need to be. So let's have a look at what this gap is and what the reasons are behind that gap, and how we can bridge that gap to get you to perform how we need you to. Because it might be that, you're in business development, or you're in sales, or you're an account manager, and, you are absolutely loving our clients, which is great. But actually what you're doing is you're focusing on one client, you're ignoring all of the rest of them, you're over delivering. So it commercially it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But they're saying, but my clients love me.
Yeah.
So how am I, what's wrong with that? And then that's when we need to understand, well, let's look at the impact, because if you're spending all of your time with that one particular client, what's happening with the rest of them? Because we need to spread our service. Equally, what is the cost of delivery to that client?
Yeah.
So helping them to understand the commercial reasons as to why you're having the conversation in the first place. At the end of that meeting, rushing ahead, the important part is so what are the action points? What are we going to take away? What are you going to do differently? And I'm going to be monitoring and reviewing this, and then we'll come together in about a month's time to see how you're getting on. You need to explore reasons behind this. So are there any mitigating circumstances, as you've just said?
Yeah.
Sure.
And we can take into account if there's any additional support that needs to be there. But the important thing is that we're probably going to put this in writing, actually. And it doesn't need to be a really formal, scary letter, but it's just a case of...
a bit of an audit trail, right?
Absolutely. To say, we've had this conversation, this is what we've agreed. this is, you know, what the next stage of the process will be, and this is a consequence, so that we can pick up on that the next time to ensure that, well, you know, you knew that this was coming.
Yeah.
We were going to have the conversation. We were really clear about what the process is. You haven't reached the required standard and met those objectives. And so now we're going to have to progress through the stages. Yeah. So you'd have, again, the same meeting. At the next stage, if it's formal, you need to follow the 3 steps. So invite them to a meeting in writing. You need to have the right to representation. They need to understand exactly what the purpose of the meeting is. And also,
right to representation being they can bring someone from a
work
body
colleague
or a colleague
or an official trade union representative.
Yeah.
But again, it's about looking at your policy, because you might have a provision in there that says that you can bring friends and family members. Yeah. That's above statute, but companies can do, organisations can have policies which go in, you know, greater than the statutory regulations. So it's really important that you follow your policy. So yeah, you would write to them, you would give them notice of the meeting, and then you would hold that meeting. You'd have a note taker there at the meeting. So it's getting to the formal stage now. Yeah. So again, you're going through, this is what we said that we were going to do. These are the objectives. Can you just help me understand, you know, what activities have you been doing? How do you think you've been getting on? What are some of the challenges that you've been experiencing? You'd adjourn the meeting to consider their representations, and make a decision on, where do I go next? Is it that they've met the criteria, in which case we need to close the loop and say, it's great, you know, you're doing what we need you to do. I'm going to set you a further number of objectives to make sure, because it's not just about hitting them once, it's about that consistency and maintaining that level of performance. So we're not going to go down a formal stage at this time. However, it's almost like a stop the clock. So if we revert back to that behaviour, then we'll pick it up again where we exited,
where we left off.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So you don't have to go back through all the steps. So if you're on, I don't know, meeting number 2, you would just rejoin at meeting number 2. Yeah.
So if, for example, you've got a first written warning in play, and then that is enough to get the desired behaviour, then what you would do is you would effectively stop the process, and if it reverted back, then you'd enter it into it, because that written warning, in accordance with your policy, may be live for a period of 12 months.
For sure. Now, we could talk forever and a day. And actually, for anyone watching, listen, what I would implore them to do is actually, if you are going through this, it sounds like something off the BBC, right? If you are experiencing these difficulties, reach out to Manage HR, speak to Charlotte, I guess the website, socials.
Yeah, where can people find you?
Absolutely. So they can go to our website, and that's mad-hr.co.uk. And on there, there's all of our contact information for all of our offices in Norwich, Ipswich and Chelmsford. Have a look on social media as well. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and all of that good stuff.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I hope you, the listeners and watchers, found it interesting, and look forward to seeing you on the next show.